Okay, here I am again. This is the second way that we can solve quadratic equations. Now again, we can recognize a quadratic equation because it has an x squared term in it. That makes it a quadratic. Okay, the first thing, and some of you may have already heard of the quadratic formula, it's a formula that helps us solve this. And you need to memorize this. There's no way around it. You can make up a song. There are songs you can look up on the internet, songs to memorize the quadratic formula. I won't sing one for you because you don't want me to do that. But it's x equals the opposite of b, not negative b, but the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So every time you use this formula, I want you to write this down so you're not trying to memorize or remember the formula and figure out what goes in the formula all at the same time. That's when we get brain overload. So another thing that you need to do is you need to always set your quadratic equation equal to 0, just like when you were factoring. So we need to always set it equal to 0. When you're completing the square, this would be an okay form, except we would need to divide everything by 2. But for the quadratic formula, we always need to set it equal to 0. So that means we need to move this -3 over. So we have 2x squared minus 4x minus 3 equals 0. Now that means this is set to use the quadratic formula. You could, now first choice is always factoring, but if we check the AC methods, 2 times -3 is -6, and there's no factors of -6 that add to -4. So we're up to either completing the square or the quadratic formula. You need to know both. This is going to be about the quadratic formula. So what I do is I write this down. If you haven't written it down, write it down again. And then I want to list what A, B, and C are. A equals, B equals, and C equals. And I want to write them down and list them. A is what's in front of x squared. B is what's in front of the x term. And C is the constant term. It's easy to remember because constant and C both start with C. So we list this. A is 2, B is -4, and C is -3. Be careful with the signs. And then we plug them into this formula. So we have the opposite of B. So since B is -4, it's going to be +4. So we have 4 plus or minus the square root of B squared. -4 squared is 16, minus 4 times A, which is 2, times C, which is -3. Be really careful with the signs in here. And then all over 2 times A, which is 2. And now everything's there. We just need to simplify it. I always like to start underneath the square root. I notice that I have 2 negative signs, which means the 2 negative signs make these positive. So we're not going to get a negative under a square root. If we got the negative under a square root, it's okay because we know how to do that. It would be an imaginary number. We would use I. So what we do is we simplify this. So this is going to be 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 plus 24 is 40. And then this is divided by 4. So now we just need to simplify this. Square root of 40. 40 is 4 times 10. So we can take a 2 out. So 4 plus or minus 2 root 10 all over 4. Now it's best to write this with two different terms. So this would be 4 over 4 plus 2 root 10 over plus or minus 2 root 10 over 4. And so it simplifies to 1 plus or minus square root of 10 over 2. So the hints for this, write down the formula, list this, make sure it's equal to 0, list A, B, and C, plug them in, simplify under here first. Now, I want to talk a little bit what's under here. This is called the discriminant. If this is positive like it is, we get two answers because the plus or minus is there. If there's a negative under here, we get two imaginary answers. And if this whole thing adds up to 0, we only get one answer because the plus or minus, kind of plus or minus 0, it doesn't make any difference. So under here, the b squared minus 4ac part, that's called the discriminant. And that just is a test to say how many solutions do we have to this quadratic equation. So have fun with that. People usually like the quadratic formula. Just be careful with the signs under here and just have fun with it.